Dear members of the American TFP, ladies and gentlemen, Salve Maria to all. I begin by thanking from the bottom of my heart the American TFP for this invitation. Unfortunately, as I told them, I'm not able to give it personally. I'm not able to attend this supporters conference personally because just as you will be listening to this conference, I will be giving it in Sicily, where we have a whole series of congresses organized after having touched Milan, Rome, Naples, Salerno, etc. We are in the middle of the campaign of presentation of a book, which I will show you right away, by Professor Plinio Correa de Oliveira about the angels. But before going into the matter, I would like to show you this beautiful statue, which will be presiding over our meeting. Is made in wood, is craftsmanship from the Austrian Tyrol, from the Austrian Alps. And it's obviously St. Michael the Archangel. So let's begin by saying, St. Michael the Archangel, pray for us. This statue will be right here in front of me, hopefully inspiring me throughout the whole conference. But anyway, as I was telling you, this lecture is based on a book recently published by Professor Plinio Correa de Oliveira, The Angelic Militia, The Angels in Today's Panorama in the Church and in Society. The title of my lecture is Leveling the Field, an Appeal to the Angels. Implicit in this title is, of course, that this field we are referring to is a battlefield. We are engaged in a battle which would be mortal if one of the contenders wouldn't be immortal, that is the Holy Roman Catholic Church. But we're engaged in a mortal battle against the revolution. And right away, permit me to read how does Professor Plinio present the subject. So the revolution has a satanic essence from which it takes its influence on the souls. We will never vanquish the revolution simply with books. We need the help of the angels. This is what we mean by leveling the field. We need the help of the angels. The meditation on the angels, the love for the angels, the devotion to the angels would communicate to Catholics an angelic brightness so splendorous that it would put the devils to escape, or to the satanic influences of the revolution. We oppose the splendor of angelic innocence, or we will be defeated. And then he says, I think that the time to speak about the angels has arrived. The more the contemporary situation presents itself as terrible, mysterious, and horrendous, the more I'm convinced that the solution is an opening to the angelic universe. So you see, ladies and gentlemen, dear members of the American TFP, we will not be speaking about just theoretical matters, about the angelology of Dr. Plinio, that is the theology about the angels in Dr. Plinio. This is a listen and do conference because it's an appeal to battle, it's a call to battle with the angels against the revolution. Now, in order to understand how can we appeal to the angels to help us in this battle against the revolution, we have to understand who the angels are. There's a whole chapter, or the first chapter in this book, dedicated to the analysis of what the angels are, their nature, their actions, their number, their hierarchy, etc. I will not enter into that. I will simply say that angels are holy spiritual beings. You see, if we analyze the creation, the created universe, we will see that the lowest part are the minerals. They simply have existence. If we go a bit higher, we have the plants. The plants have existence, and they have a what it's called a principium vitae, a principle of life. They have life. If we go further up, we have the animals. The animals have existence, the animals have vegetative life, and they have a superior type of life called instinctive or sensitive life. The animals have instincts. Sometimes they're so perfect that they almost seem to be human. Well, they're not human, they're animal, but it's the instinct life or the sensitive life. Then we go up to man. We are a mixture of matter, body, and spirit, soul. Mind you, it's not body and soul sort of glued together or put together as we would have oil in water. No, we are one person, we are one single being with a material element and a spiritual element very closely intertwined, very closely immersed, so to speak, one in the other. We are one. We are a human person. The concept of person is very important in Catholic doctrine. Then we go up and we have the angelic world, that is the world of the angels who are purely spirits. And then at the heights of the universe, of course, there is God who is unique. There's only one God. So the angels are spiritual beings hierarchically disposed between man and God. Now, they are part of creation, and this is very important. They are part of creation, and as such, we relate to them as we relate to all of creation. We relate to minerals. For example, when we build a house, we build it with bricks and stones, etc. That's minerals. We relate to plants. Some plants we admire, like a flower. Some plants we eat, like a carrot. We relate to animals in so many ways. We relate especially with other human beings, sociality, social relationships. We relate to all creatures. Why shouldn't we relate to the angels? So, the same way that we relate to all the other levels of creation, we also relate to the angels because, and this is the first point I would like to explain, angels are part of creation. And therefore, we are surrounded by angels just as we are surrounded by minerals, by plants, by animals, and by fellow humans. Second point is what's the mission? What's the function of the angels? Because God doesn't do things just because he whims, just whimsically. It just came to his mind that I'll do this, I'll do that. No, everything God does is infinitely wise because it comes from his infinite wisdom. Now, angels have a function in creation, and that function is to be mediators of God's action. Angelos in Greek or angelos in Greek is messenger. Meaning an in-between person, a person who brings a message from a higher person, in this case God, to a lower one. So angels assist God in his government of the universe. God's government of the universe is called providence. The angels are collaborators of God in in providence, that is, in the government of the universe by God. Now, this government is done as secondary cause. And this is a very delicate concept that I would like to explain very quickly. And it takes us even to the concept of mediation, because Protestants tend not to understand the concept of mediation because they don't understand the concept of secondary cause, the concept of cumulative action. I'll give you an example. Let's say it's totally theoretical. Let's say that the president of the United States decides through a executive order or something, decides that every single born American, when he or she turns 18, will receive a $5,000 grant from the state, from the government, in order to help him or her begin his life. So the president gives order to the Federal Reserve, because it's the Federal Reserve who has to give the money. The Federal Reserve then gives the money to the states, because this is something that has to be administered by the states on a state level. And each state decides how to give out this money concretely. For example, let's say that the state of Pennsylvania decides to give this money out through the post offices, because post offices are everywhere, so it's very easy to go to the post office and get your money. Now, imagine that I'm a born American. I turn 18. I go to the post office and say, "Look, I just turned 18. I'm a born American. Please give me my money." And there is good old Mrs. Robinson at the post office, and she says, "Yeah, sure. Here is your $5,000." Now, I can say, if someone asks me, "Who gave you this money?" I can say, "Mrs. Robinson gave me this money." But of course, Mrs. Robinson could say, "No, it's the state who gave the money to the post office. The post office gave it to me to give it out to you." But the state of Pennsylvania could say, "Well, I received this money from the Federal Reserve." Federal Reserve would say, "Well, we gave this money because the president ordered us to do so." So you see, in this act of Mrs. Robinson giving me the $5,000, there are five cumulative actions which begin with the first action by the president, going through the Federal Reserve, the state, the post office, all the way down to good old Mrs. Robinson. This is the concept of cumulative action. And this is how the intercessors work in the universe. Our Lady, for example, is the mediatrix of all graces. God gives graces through Our Lady. He could have done otherwise. He could have given graces just directly to the angels and to men. Sure, he can do anything. But once he chose to have a universal mediatrix, Our Lady, that is corresponding to a very high reason of his infinite wisdom. And therefore, it's not simply accidental. It's not simply that he just whimsically chose to do it like this, but he could have done it some differently. If he did it like this, it corresponds to a very high design of his infinite wisdom. Well, the angels are agents, are messengers, are agents that collaborate with God in the government of the universe. First of all, they collaborate with him in the government of the physical universe, the movements of the planets, of the stars, etc. They collaborate with God in the government of the physical laws. The physical laws are laws embedded in nature, but they come from God. They have their origin in God, and God will that there be angels protecting the natural laws, the laws of physics. I'm speaking the laws of nature, law of gravity, etc., etc. So they help God keep the universe together, so to speak. But very specially, and this is the excuse me, I'm looking down to a scheme, to an outline that I wrote down. Um, but They also help, and this is their most important mission, and this is the subject of my lecture. They especially help men to attain their end. What's our end? It's to reach heaven. That is, to die in the state of grace and therefore merit to enter the kingdom of heaven. This is our goal. This is our end. If you read the Catechism of Baltimore, it says, "Why were we created? We were created in order to know, love, and serve God in this world, and then be happy with Him ever after." So we were created to be happy with God, and the angels collaborate with God in this. And this is their most important mission, that is, helping men attain their end. Their material end, yes, we can ask our angel to intercede for us, for our health, or for our certain human situation that we have. But very especially, they collaborate with God in the process of our sanctification. And this is their most important mission. Now, how does an angel act? And here we go a bit more concretely in how an angel acts. In the first place, this is very well explained by St. Thomas Aquinas. In the first place, the sheer presence of the angel is beneficial, is good. And St. Thomas says, just as a hot body warms a colder body. I mean, if you put a cold body near or together with a hot body, the hot body will transfer heat to the cold body. And St. Thomas says, just as a hot body warms a cold body just by being there, the presence of the angel is beneficial. And this is why we always have to pray that the angels come. If you might have seen this prayer by Dr. Plinio. He adapted the exorcism, which is to chase away the devils. He adapted it as if it were an appeal to the angels. And we normally pray it every single day because we have to appeal to the angels, that the angels be here with us. We've all read stories of medieval battles, and we've all read episodes that at a certain point the chief, the king or the prince or the leader is killed, and the whole army loses its nerve, it panics, and they are defeated just because one man was killed. Because the mere presence of the king or the duke or the leader gave enthusiasm and gave strength to the army. This is the action of presence of an angel. And therefore, the first way the angels help us is by their mere presence. We need to have the angels with us. But then the angels also influence us. They influence our way of being. They influence our action. How? Now, this is very important. Angels, meaning good angels, angels proper, and bad angels, that the devils, angels cannot implant an idea in our minds, and they cannot change our will, against us. That is, they cannot force our will, they cannot bend our will, because we are a person with an intellectual independence. That is, nobody can implant ideas in our head. And secondly, we have free will. And free will makes it so that nobody except God, and He never does it, because He respects the freedom He gave us, no one can bend our will. But the angels can incline, they can tamper with our heads, they can tamper with our imagination, they can tamper with our intelligence, and they can incline our will. The angels, in order that we do good, that we know the truth and that we do good. The devils, in order that we don't know the truth, we reject the truth, and we do evil, that is, we sin. How do they do, do this? Well, first of all, I said the angels can manipulate our imagination. They can tamper with our imagination. How? There's a principle of the order of the universe that the higher creatures govern the lower creatures. For example, if I'm strolling in a field, in a public field, and I see a beautiful flower, I can pick it up. And in order to admire it, I can take it back home. I can give it to my wife. I can do with it whatever I want because flowers were intended for our use. I govern upon the flowers. I said a public field because, of course, if it's a private garden, I cannot trespass, but that's another problem. Um, I govern the animals. The animals were created for our service. So I can govern the animals because I'm superior to the animals. So the angels, they can govern the laws of nature. They can govern matter. And they cannot create an idea and put it in our mind, but they can tamper, and I'm using this verb tamper on purpose. They can tamper with my brain processes. They can tamper with my synapses. They can tamper with the chemicals that are circulating. They can tamper with my fluids. They can materially tamper with my body in order to create certain reactions, certain things. For example, sometimes I have a recurrent idea, immoral idea, and it just simply comes popping up again and again and again. How come this idea is popping up? It's not because the angel can put this idea in my mind, but an angel, in this case, it will be a devil, an angel can mess up my brain, the functions of my brain metabolism, in order to create a certain chaos in it, in order that I begin to dream crazy dreams, crazy imagination. A devil can do that. So a devil can create images, or an angel can create images. An angel create good images, etc., etc. So angels can tamper with our brains, but I repeat, they can never control our brains. They can never control our intelligence. They can also tamper with my metabolism. In the Middle Ages, they used the term humor. It's a medieval concept. Today, we would call it hormones. We would call it biochemical reaction. We will call it physical chemical reactions, etc. Maybe there's a doctor among you, a medical doctor. Well, I also studied medicine. I didn't finish, but I began the career. Anyway, today we speak about hormones and biochemical process, and we know how things work. Back in the Middle Ages, they spoke about humors. And St. Thomas explains that angels can tamper with our humors in order to create a predisposition to something, either for good or for bad. For example, if I'm assisting a beautiful mass, a beautiful Tridentine mass with Gregorian choir and incense and beautiful paraments, etc., an angel can work in my, let's call them with the medieval term, in my humors, in order to make me serene, happy, calm, and therefore predispose my soul to admiration, to veneration, to prayer. On the other side, a devil can instill in me restlessness, nervousness, boredom, etc., etc. I repeat, physically. But this reflects immediately in my state of mind. It reflects immediately in my state of spirit. So I can be very, very bored, even if the ceremony is beautiful. Well, this is a typical action of angels upon us. So, summing it up, an angel cannot implant an idea in my mind. An angel cannot bend my will, but they can tamper with my imagination in order to favor certain ideas, and they can tamper with my humors, with my metabolism, in order to incline my will. I'll just give you one example. We've all passed through this event. Sometimes we see an immoral picture, just happen to see it while going through a magazine or something. Sometimes we see the immoral picture and we just go past by as if it were rain that is falling. Nothing happens. Sometimes that picture sort of jumps at us. Look at me, look at me, look at me. And I'm taken by a sort of vibration which is conducive to me falling into sin of impurity. How come the same fact, looking at a picture, can provoke an reaction of indifference or a reaction of attraction? It can depend on the action of angels and the action of devils working on my humors in order to predispose, in order to incline my will in a certain direction. So this is the way the angels work. Now, I'm going a step further. There's a very special type of action the angels do with each one of us, and that is our guardian angel. That guardian angels exist has been, it's not a dogma, but has been part of the doctrine of the church in the very first centuries. I have a text here that I would read it to you so as not to lose more time. But there's a text by Saint Jerome, 4th century, and he says the idea of a guardian angel belongs to the doctrine of the church since times immemorial. Now, what are times immemorial for the 4th century saints? Since the beginning of the church. So then there are certain passages in the Gospels, for example, when our Lord lets the children come to him and says, "Let the children come unto me, because to them belongs the kingdom of heaven," etc., etc. And I say to you, their angels are before my Father in heaven. They're angels. That each one of the children had an angel. Then we see other passages of in the Old Testament of guardian angels of nations, the guardian angels of Persia, the guardian angel of Israel, etc. So the guardian angels exist. Now, question: Are or is the guardian angel given randomly? When I'm conceived or when I'm born, does God says, "Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, tic tac toe, you go to be the guardian angel of Julio Loredo randomly"? No, because God never does anything randomly. Everything God does is supremely and perfectly wise. That is um, corresponding to a perfect principle of his infinite wisdom. So God created this angel for this person. Now, what does it mean that God created? When did God create? First one and then the other. Well, chronologically speaking, yes, but we're speaking about time. First, the angels were created, and then the humans were created. But in God's mind, there's no time. So in God's mind, the angel and the person are simultaneous. And um, how to explain the very first, excuse me, the very first idea then is one guardian angel for one guarded person. And here we have to analyze a first element of this guardianship is the suspension, excuse me, suspension in being. You know that God is the only being per se, that is the only necessary being. We're all beings per accidents. That is, we're not necessary. If I died, nothing will happen to the order of the universe. If God disappeared, the universe would disappear with him. God is a necessary being. That means that if a non necessary being, that's creation, or a being per accidents, thus they don't have, or we don't have in ourselves, the reason for our existence. Only God is the reason of his existence. When Moses asked him, "Who are you?" he answers, "I am." Some translations say, "I am he who is." But he's always playing with the word to be, because God is not defined by anything. We are defined. For example, I'm blonde, I am Peruvian, I live in Milan, Italy, etc. So I always define myself by something exterior. If you ask me, who are you? I cannot say I am. Only God can. So we don't have in ourselves the reason of our existence. Therefore, the reason for our existence has to be sought elsewhere, and this is God. God continuously sustains us in our being. This is called the sustention in being. If God absurdly would go to sleep for 1 second, the universe would disappear because this suspension would have ceased. Now, God works through secondary causes. God works or acts through intercessors. That is, this suspension in being, my suspension in being, comes through my guardian angel. It comes through the angels in general, but very specially through my guardian angel. And here, Dr. Plinio explains the concept of complementarity. Um, when you have the idea of a house, there are walls and there's a roof. The idea of house is composed of walls and roof. You cannot have the idea of a house just by walls or just with a roof. You will have walls or you will have a roof. That is, there is a complementarity between roof and walls that together they make a house. You can have a roof, you can have a wall, but you won't have a house if you don't put them together. The idea of house in, contains two complementary realities, roof and walls. That is also so for my guardian angel. Me and my guardian angel are one because God created my angel thinking about me, and he created me thinking about my angel. So we are not simply near, we are not simply two beings that touch each other. In a certain sense, we are two beings that intermingle to a certain point because we cannot confuse the essences. We are two different persons, two different essences, because if not, we will fall into pantheism. Notwithstanding this, there is a very intimate relation between the angel and me. The angel is part of me, as I am part of my guardian angel. You see, this is the intimacy that I have with my guardian angel. A guardian angel is not my brother who is beside me. A guardian angel is literally the medium anima mea, that is half of my soul. And being half of my soul, I am also part of his soul. I repeat, without confusing the essences, without confusing the substances, excuse me, because if not, we will fall into pantheism. That's the sustentation of in being. Now, going to another point, what is the main function, the main goal, the main end of a guardian angel? You'll say, well, it's to guard me, that is to protect me from accidents, protect me from evil, etc. Yes, but if we read the prayer that we normally pray to the guardian angel, it's light, guard, rule, and guide. The first one is to light, to enlighten. And Saint Dionysius Areopagite, or the pseudo Dionysius Areopagite, he says, light, perfect, and guide. So the first thing is light, to enlighten me. My guardian angel is meant to enlighten me. How? My guardian angel knows about God, things that I can even dream of, because he's an angel. His intelligence is an angelical intelligence, and he receives lights from the higher angels. It's what St. Thomas calls the locutio angelorum, the conversation of the angels. So he receives all the way from the seraphims lights, which he can transmit to me. So the first point that when we pray to our angel is light, enlighten me. Perfect. What does perfection mean? Perfection comes from Latin per factum. That is totally done or totally made. If I'm carving a statue, when I finish the statue, it's a perfect because it's per factum, it's all done. Well, what does it mean for me to be perfect? When God created me, or each one of you, he had a plan. He had the idea of a perfect and saintly Julio Loredo, which not only means a pure Julio Loredo, a good Julio Loredo, etc., but also the things that I have to think, that I have to do, that I have to be. There's a model, heavenly model of Julio Loredo, which is what God had in his mind when he created me. Now, who knows this model? My guardian angel does, because he knows God face to face. Of course, it's a metaphor because neither the angel nor God have faces, but that's how you say it. They know face to face. So our angel helps us perfect ourselves because he understands the model and he incarnates, so to speak, with that doesn't have carne, he doesn't have body, but he assumes that model. My guardian angel is the angelic model of what I should be. Then he guards us, he rules us, rules meaning to give us a direction, do this, don't do this, etc. But when I have a perfect devotion to my guardian angel, I come to be, and this is a whole chapter of Dr. Plinius' thoughts, and it's here in this book about the angels, it's a bit explained, but very summarized, the concept of assumption. When I am totally devoted to my angel, I make a holocaust to my angel, and my angel makes a holocaust to me, thus that we become one. It's a little bit like a perfect marriage. Our Lord says, there will be like one flesh. Marriage is much more than the vicinity of two people loving each other greatly. Marriage makes sort of a third entity. There will be one flesh. Well, this also happens with our angel. we don't become one flesh, because angels don't have flesh, but we can become one with our angel, and this is what Dr. Plinio calls assumption. And um, I will read a part, excuse me, I'm looking for it. I will read a part, a just a couple of lines from this book by Dr. Plinio, The Angelic Militia. It says, purifying, enlightening, and perfectioning is a triple action that implies the total gift of the archetype to the type. The archetype is the angel, the type is us, who in its turn corresponds by giving himself totally to the archetype. When the archetype purifies, enlightens, and perfections, he gives himself totally to him. The archetype does the holocaust of himself to the type. It's something that goes beyond the accidents without touching the essence. The archetype, our guardian angel, sort of lives in me, assuming me, assimilating me. I, on my turn, make a total holocaust and let myself be assumed by my guardian angel, who takes all my potentialities to their last consequences. That is, when I have with my angel this relationship of assumption, my intelligence, which is human, in a certain sense, receives an angelic light. For example, how come St. Thomas Aquinas was called the angelic doctor? His intelligence was angelical because he was assumed by his angel, and it was him, Thomas Aquinas, thinking, but he was thinking with a little bit of an angelic light, an angelic lumen. He was assumed by the my purity. Every one of us wants to be pure. When we are assumed by our angel infuses in us, say, a drop of his own angelic purity. This is why purity is called the virtue of the angels. So the angel begins to live inside him, making him reach his perfection, his plenitude, and his sanctity. This is the relationship between the guardian angel and me. Now, the last 10 or 15 minutes that I have, I will speak about this in the fight between revolution and counter-revolution. Because you see, God created first the angels, and the angels were perfectly happy. They loved God, they venerated God, they sung the glories of God. You know, holy, holy, holy God, the Lord of the armies. You know, at a certain point, one angel rebelled. This is Lucifer. And he said, non serviam, I shall not obey. That is, I don't accept the order that you created. I will rebel against this. Against him rose Saint Michael. Michael means who is like God. Quis ut Deus, he shouted. Quis ut Deus, who is like God. And the Apocalypse says, a great battle, a prelium magnum, a great battle was fought in heaven, and Michael and his angels fought against Lucifer and his angels until there was no more place for them in heaven, and they were precipitated into hell. Our Lord Jesus Christ himself, at a certain point, he says, I saw Lucifer falling down from heaven like lightning. So there was a fight in heaven, there was a battle in heaven, and this battle produced winners and losers. Winners were the angels, two-thirds of the total angels, who were confirmed in grace and will live everlastingly in heaven with God. The losers were the devils who were punished and thrown into hell. Well, as any bad spirit loser, the devil doesn't accept his defeat. So he conspires, constantly conspire in order, he knows he cannot kill God, he knows he cannot destroy God, but he tries to destroy God's work in creation. And this is from the very first time of the battle in heaven. The devils conspire against the work of God. When God created the human race, when God created man, he created man so men could be happy with him in heaven. So men could fill out the empty thrones, the thrones that were left empty in heaven. And well, the devil had to interfere with God's plan. He tempted Eve, Eve tempted Adam, and we know the story, original sin. But then God punishes. He punishes the snake, he punishes Adam, he punishes Eve, but then he says, I shall put enmities between you, snake, and her, the woman, our lady. Between your offspring and her offspring, she will crush your head. That is, there's a fundamental, essential enmity. And beware that God doesn't speak in singular, enmity. He speaks enmities in plural, inimicitias with an S. There are enmities between the devil and Our Lady, between the offspring of the devil and the offspring of Our Lady, the race of the devil and the race of Mary. And this is the thread that goes or comes throughout history. Now, in our days, this battle between good and evil takes on a very special characteristic, which is the battle between the revolution, evil, and the counter revolution, good. You all know what the revolution is. You've all read Revolution and Counter Revolution by Professor Plinio. So today, this fight between the snake and the woman, between the devil and Our Lady, takes the form of the battle between the revolution and the counter revolution. Now, just as in that first battle, there were angels and devils, in all the battles in history um, that relate to the fight between good and evil, goodness and evil, there are angels on one side and devils on the other side. And this is why we cannot possibly think of doing a counter revolution without the angels. If there are devils on the other side, there have to be angels on our side. It's like, imagine, excuse me, the horrible image that I will give, but imagine a high school football team going to the Super Bowl. They will be crushed. They'll be simply crushed because Super Bowl level teams are top level football teams. A high school can be good, can be better, can be worse, but it's a high school team. If they try to play a game against Super Bowl level teams, they'll be crushed. And this is what happens with the counter revolution when we don't have resource to the angels. So the last part of the meetings that I will be given is some texts by Dr. Plinio explaining how this fight is concretely speaking today. And with this, I will finish my lecture. So the first revolutionary of history was Satan. He made in heaven the first revolution in history. Against him rose Saint Michael, the first counter-revolutionary in history. Saint Michael was the herald of hierarchy and obedience, against the cursed standard of disobedience and egalitarianism. So, then he says, I'm not of the idea that war between the angels ended in heaven, because everything in creation is reversible. There's a reversibility and an analogy between the fight among angels and the fight among men in history. The war in heaven was the model of all the wars that would be fought here on earth. The snake insinuates itself, it tempts, the angels help us and fight, and the war continues. Here on earth, whenever there's a battle between good and evil, between truth and error, between beauty and ugliness, there is always the battle between angels and devils. On earth, there is a total contrast between those who constitute the race of the virgin and those who constitute the race of the snake. These two races constitute literally two threads that are continuously fighting throughout history, and this is the essence of history. And then he says, this is what characterizes the modern chivalry. You know that we speak a lot about chivalry. Our summer camps are called Call to Chivalry. We would like to be knights of the counter-revolution, and we are hereby convoking you to be knights and dames of the counter-revolution. Now, we cannot speak of a chivalry, counter-revolutionary chivalry, if we don't speak about the angels. Saint Michael was the first knight of history because he expelled from hell the first criminal of history, the first Judas of history. Saint Michael is, therefore, the patron saint of knights. Saint Michael is the patron saint of cavalry. No human chivalry, not cavalry, excuse me, chivalry. No human chivalry is wholly militant if it doesn't have an angelic dimension. I will repeat this because this is the conclusion of all my lecture. No human chivalry is wholly militant if it doesn't have an angelic dimension. The angelic dimension is the characteristic of chivalry for the future centuries. The TFP today is not a movement to defend this or that or that good, but a movement to promote every form of good against every form of bad, of evil. I see that with the favor of Our Lady and with the prayers of the angels and the saints, upon the counter-revolution, there lingers an angelic action, myriads of angels that open the way, multiplying our force. In the TFP, there is an intimate intertwining between men and angels. I think that the TFP has received in a particular way an angelic exemplarity. Exemplarity means being a model of beauty. In front of the revolutionary world, the TFP has an angelic exemplarity whereby it obtains, or wherefrom, it obtains its strength. It's the angelic chivalry that mysteriously continues in the TFP, giving it a superior force. Well, I can continue going on and on, but I've already been speaking for 55 minutes. I don't really know what was the time that I should have spoken. Please excuse me if I overstepped that time. But anyway, I finish with a desire. Please pray that we can translate this book into English and publish it in the United States. And who knows if in some months' time, maybe next year, we'll be having this meeting personally, and I will be able to go there to visit you. To all and each one of you, Salve Maria, not before asking Saint Michael the Archangel, pray for us. Salve Maria, and thank you very much.